If 7 years of Boy Scouts as a kid taught me anything, it's to be prepared. And I don't really consider myself a planner, but with hunting, I just can't help myself. I really want to be successful. Today, we're going to talk about everything I consider and plan before heading out on a hunting trip. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Persistence Outdoors podcast. This time of year, there aren't as many hunting seasons going on, but if you're like me, you still have hunting on your mind. Also, some of you may be putting in for certain tags, or maybe you've even drawn one already, and to get the hunt and the experience that you want, it's going to take some planning. Planning a hunt doesn't have to be complicated, especially if it's close to home and you get out regularly. For example, I go on, for lack of a better word, spontaneous hunts pretty often. And it's basically just grab my bag, fill up my water bottle, and go. But other times, hunting is a serious time commitment. You're driving a few hours to get to the place you want to hunt. Then you're staying for a few days because it really doesn't make sense to go home in the evenings. And maybe you're coordinating with friends who are going to meet you out there. A hunt like this can be logistically challenging, and there's a lot to think about. So today, I'm going to walk you through how I plan this type of hunt. Before we jump in, I want to say thank you to everyone who follows this podcast. I really appreciate your support. We've got some folks on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, some other places as well. And if you don't already, please take a moment to follow the show. It will help the podcast grow and be suggested to more people. And as it grows, we can help more people get outside and into hunting. With that, let's talk about planning a hunt. My first piece of advice is to make sure that there is a tag available for you. And I say this from experience. This past deer season, I was planning to have my dad come out and hunt deer with me in North Idaho, and there's no quota for tags for residents. So as many residents as want a tag in my area, they can get a tag. But there is a quota, there is a cap for non-residents. And I didn't even think about this. I just assumed because there were so many deer, as many people who wanted to hunt could. So that was dumb because less than a week before we were starting our hunt, we talked about this, him and I, on the phone, and I realized that there could be a cap. And so I immediately called the Fish and Game officer, and they told me that all the non-resident tags were sold out. So that was disappointing, and we ended up changing our hunt plan. We went somewhere else, and it was still enjoyable to go hunting, but we weren't able to do what we had been planning on doing. So make sure you can get a tag. You may need to enter a drawing. You may need to put in an application. Other places you can get the tag over the counter, but make sure that if you're a non-resident, you understand what the stipulations are. And if you're a resident, also, you still want to know how you can for sure get a tag. Now, along with this is your licenses and your fees and all those other things that go into allowing you to legally hunt. Make sure you can get all of those out of the way before you go hunting. You may want to check how much these are going to cost, especially if you're hunting out of state. They can get real expensive, and you wouldn't want to get up close to your hunt, maybe a week out, and realize it's a lot more money than you want to pay. So take some time to sort these things out. It should be as easy as going online and just either buying your licenses and tags online or reading the resources that are available. And it doesn't take long to verify that you actually can go on the hunt that you want to go on. One thing I'll throw in here before I move on is that if you're new to hunting, you need to make sure that you have finished your hunter's safety course before you will be able to buy any license or tags. So make sure that you get that out of the way right now in January in the off season. Now is a great time to do it. You'll have plenty of time to take the course at whatever pace you need to go at. And then you can have those things in your mind and start thinking about them well before hunting season. So you should only have to take that course once, and then you will need to show your Fish and Game agency that you've taken it, and that should allow you to buy licenses and tags. The next step when planning a hunt is to read your regulations. And frankly, this is not the most enjoyable thing to do, but it is very important. Every state will have their own regulations booklet or PDF, and they will usually publish this both online and then also as a booklet that you can find in a sporting goods store. So whatever way you want to access it, it's up to you, but make sure you find the official rules for your state. And inside the regulations booklet, you can find a couple different sort of levels of rules. You will find general hunting rules, which apply to pretty much all hunting. You may find species-specific rules. So there's going to be different rules for hunting white-tailed deer than there are for hunting black bears, for example. And then you might also find rules for specific units or specific types of hunts. So when you get into the regulations, you want to start by reading the general rules. You want to understand what types of firearms are legal in the state you're hunting in. You want to know the hunting hours. You want to know rules about hunting near roads, like how far off of a road do you need to be to take a shot, things like that, just general stuff that may differ from state to state. Also, if you're reading the regulations for the state you live in and where you've hunted before, you do need to keep up with these rules from year to year. They can change, and you wouldn't want to be out hunting and just make a simple mistake that you get fined for just because you didn't know about the new rules. And as hunters, it is our responsibility to keep up with these things. And so I think it's a good idea to just read through those general rules every year. The other thing you'll find in the rules pamphlets are the season dates. And so there can be different seasons throughout the year, like an archery season, any weapon season, maybe a muzzleloader season. And so this is going to help you plan your hunt because you know when you can actually hunt. Some animals will have long seasons, like a couple months. Other animals, it's going to be very short. There's elk seasons in Washington and Idaho, in the area I am, that are only 2 weeks long. And so if you want to hunt elk, you have to go during those 2 weeks. Now, if you have any questions about the regulations, you can always call a fish and wildlife officer, and they should be able to clear up any questions you have. I've also emailed my Fish and Game agency, and that has been helpful as well. Sometimes it's nice to get something in writing if it is a little bit confusing or it seems like a gray area. And so don't be shy about getting the clarification you need so that you can hunt confidently. That's their job. They're there for you. And sometimes these rule booklets can just be a little bit unwieldy and complicated. The next thing that I do is research online. And this is maybe something that not everybody does, but I think it can be very handy and help you get an idea of the area that you're hunting, even if you've never been there before. So there's 3 main places that I might look. The first place is on the Fish and Game website for your state. Here you can look up the unit that you're hunting in, and oftentimes there will be helpful information about that unit. It might talk about what animals are there. It might talk about the access. It might talk about places where you can camp nearby. So all of these things can be helpful when you're planning your hunt. Now, I said 3 places to look. Really, the second place is just part of the Fish and Game website. Many states have harvest statistics for each different season. And so in Idaho, I can go and look at harvest statistics for different units in different species for the past something like 20 years. And so this is very helpful if you're trying to actually choose a unit to hunt in. For example, you can find a unit that has a very high success rate. And if you're a new hunter, maybe that's where you want to go. You could also find a unit that has very few hunters. And so if you're a little bit more experienced, or if you just really value getting away from other people, you could go to that unit. Or maybe you just want to find the unit that has the most trophy class animals, maybe deer with more than 5 points on each side, something like that. Oftentimes, these state game agencies will collect this information, and it can be very helpful to give you an idea of what to expect. Now, be careful when you're looking through these, because you really need to consider why the numbers are the way they are. Sometimes you might see a unit that shows very high success rates, and you think that's where I'm going to go. But when you actually look at the unit, you find out that most of the unit is private land. And so it would be hard for you to hunt there if you don't have private land access. So just keep these things in mind so that you don't end up disappointed or misled by the statistics. Now, the third place I would check is on online forums. There's a couple very popular online forums out there like Rockslide and Hunt Talk. And people will often post on these forums asking for advice about certain areas. And you can glean a lot of information just by skimming these threads. Now, if you go and post on one of these forums, be careful not to ask specifically about a single unit or to give away an area. It's better to be vague. So you could say, hey, I'm hunting in North Idaho. I'm interested in this, that, and the other. But you don't want to be like, hey, I'm hunting in Unit 47 off Highway 6 right next to Deer Mountain, because there's likely people who hunt there and they've put in a lot of work to find good areas to hunt, and you don't want to just blow that up for them. So be tactful. If you need specific information, or if someone's willing to give you specific information, maybe DM them privately, and that way you're not going to mess up anybody's hunting area. Besides Rockslide and Hunt Talk, many states have their own forums. So I remember Tennessee had a pretty good deer hunting forum. I think Washington has a hunting forum. Just go and find whatever one applies to you, and I'm sure you will learn a lot. The next thing I would do when planning a hunt is do a little e-scouting. So e-scouting is just the process of using maps and aerial imagery to understand the area that you are going to hunt. Most people do this with a hunting app like onX Hunt. And onX Hunt shows you aerial imagery, it shows you topography lines, it shows you roads, it can show you private and public land boundaries. onX Hunt is such a useful app, and I recommend it to anybody who wants to hunt. There's so many things that you can buy that cost a lot of money and will marginally improve your success. Like you could buy a new rifle, or you could buy new camo, and maybe they'll affect your success, maybe they won't. But if you buy onX Hunt and you learn how to use it, it will for sure help you find and kill animals. So highly recommend it. It's something like $35 a year. I'm not affiliated with them. I just believe in it that much. So get onX and open it up and start looking at the area that you want to hunt. And you're trying to narrow down where you think your best chances of killing animals will be. You're going to look for habitat, right? You might want to look for habitat variety of different plants and terrains in a single area. You want to look for food, shelter, and water. So if you understand the animal you're hunting, you should be able to identify the things that they need. Water's the easy one, right? It's going to flow in valleys, or you'll see little ponds or swamps, things like that. But maybe you're hunting elk in a late season, and you know that they will find food on south-facing slopes where there's less snow and more sunlight. Or maybe go a completely different direction. Maybe you're hunting chukar and you're trying to find shelter. Where are they going to roost? Well, they like those cliffy faces to roost in. And so you can start finding these things on aerial imagery pretty easily, and it will start to give you ideas for how to hunt the unit. The next thing you want to look at is the terrain. Is it super steep or is it pretty gentle? What elevation is it at? Is snow going to be an issue? What are your travel routes? Are there ridges you can walk? Are those ridges covered in deadfall? All those things are going to be helpful when it comes time to hunt. And then the last thing that I would really pay attention to is access. How are you going to get into this area? Can you drive in, or do you need to drive to a trailhead and then hike in? And then is the hike an easy hike, or is it going to be a long ways? All of these things you can find out just by using an app on your phone. It's not that expensive, and you can do it anytime. I highly recommend that you start e-scouting before your hunts. While I highly encourage you to e-scout, I also encourage you to scout in person. Sometimes you get out to the area and you realize it's a little bit different than the impression you got from e-scouting. For example, last spring bear season, I was scouting in an area that I had looked on maps, and there was a road that went way back into the area that I wanted to go. And so I started driving up that direction. However, there was a gate that wasn't marked on the map and it was closed over this road. And so I couldn't even get back, the something like 5 or 10 miles that I wanted to go. And it would have been a complete waste of my time if I had driven out there 2 hours during the hunting season. So I was glad to find that out before I was actually hunting. It was disappointing, but at least I had time to change my plans. I would also say that it's hard to e-scout dense, overgrown country. So if there's a lot of tree cover, it could be hiding things that could be beneficial to your hunt. So if you live in an area with lots of mature forests, it may still be useful to get out and walk through some of these areas and see what you find. When you're scouting in person, you can also find animals and animal sign, which is a huge confidence boost. One thing to think about, though, when you're scouting in person outside of the hunting season is just that you want to think about where the animals are during the time you can hunt them. So, for example, you could scout for white-tailed deer in winter. People do it all the time. But you need to think about where the deer are going to be in the fall when you can hunt them, not necessarily where they are in the winter. So you might look for rubs where the animals were active during the rutting season, and that could be helpful information. But if you find something like sheds, where the animals have dropped their antlers, they might be in a different place when they drop their antlers than they are in the actual hunting season. If you want to learn more about scouting and e-scouting, go check out episode 68. I do a deep dive there, and there's a lot of great information, especially if you're new to hunting. All right, once I've got a good idea of where I'm planning to hunt and what the area is like, I'm going to plan my stay. So I'm going to think about if I'm going to stay in a tent or a cabin or something else. The area that you stay in obviously affects your hunt, because if you're staying at a motel and then going out each morning, that's going to be much different than backpacking in and camping in the evenings. So it can really dictate what things you need to pack. It can dictate what time you need to get up in the mornings, all sorts of things like that. So start thinking about what makes sense for you. Another good episode to check out is episode 20. I talk about shelter systems, so tents, tarps, bivvies, and even your car. Kind of go through the pros and cons of all of those. Besides just your shelter system, you also need to think about where you will get water and how you will keep your food. Water is a big one, especially in times of year when water is a little bit more scarce. That can affect your hunt a lot as well. What I've done is that if I'm going to be near my car, I've just started bringing gallon jugs of water in my car. And if it's a short hunt, usually I just fill up from my car. But if you're going to be out for a while or you're going to be backpacking in, you really need to pay attention where some water is, and hopefully it's nearby and it won't take a long time for you to fill up on water every day. Also, you may want to be near water just because that's where animals are likely to be, so that's helpful too. And then as far as food is concerned, sometimes the hunt will be cold enough that you can just keep food outside and it's like a refrigerator and you'll be fine. Other times you might need to bring a cooler, or you're going to have to bring dehydrated food that will last a long time. If you are going to keep food outside, you may need to think about keeping it away from bears. That could mean a bear bag. That could mean food in a bear safe container. Oftentimes, if I'm car camping, I'm just going to put my food in a cooler and then put it in my truck and keep it safe from bears that way. But you need to think through all of these things before you get out there so you can stay safe and comfortable. At this point, you pretty much have the basis for a great hunt. But while you're planning, there's a few other things I would think about. You may want to start planning and assembling your kit. I highly encourage you to make a packing list. And don't just write it on a piece of paper. Go to your phone or to a spreadsheet on your computer and make a packing list that you can use repeatedly. I have a master packing list, and it has basically everything I would want for something like a week-long elk hunting trip. And from that master packing list, I've made smaller packing lists. So I have a day hunt packing list. I have a spring bear hunting packing list. All these different packing lists that are slightly adapted to whatever hunt I'm going on. I also have just a car camping packing list. And this is super helpful because I don't have to think about these things repeatedly. I can just check my list, adjust it as necessary, and I'm good to go. The off season, this time of year when there's not as many hunting seasons open, is a great time to test your gear. So if you have anything that wasn't working great for you during the hunting season, or if you're trying to find something new, go on a hike or go on a short camping trip and test your gear out and see how it's doing. And then you can update your packing list accordingly. And then one more tip for you, if you are closer to your hunt and you actually pack your backpack, keep your backpack packed for that whole season. That way you don't have to worry about where your things are. If you just keep it all packed, you can grab that before you go, and you can do multiple hunting trips without constantly packing and unpacking. The next thing you need to do is plan some time to shoot. It's easy to get caught up in all the other aspects of hunting and then realize that the season has arrived and you've hardly shot your rifle at all. Many hunters will go out the day before the season and go shoot a couple shots just to make sure that their scope is on and call it good. But in my experience, it's actually a lot harder to shoot in hunting situations than it is when you're in a controlled environment at a shooting range. For example, this hunting season, I killed an elk and I killed a deer. Both took 2 shots in situations that could have easily taken 1 shot. You know, nothing was at a ridiculously far range. They were both in calm scenarios where I had enough time, and I still felt excited and made not horrible shots, but not the shots that I wanted to make. And so I need to practice more. And that just means getting out and shooting my rifle more. One thing you should really consider is the difference between sighting in your rifle and practice, or shooting from a bench and practice. Just because you can shoot a great 3-shot or 5-shot group from a bench doesn't mean that you can replicate that in the field. In the field, you're likely not going to have a nice front and back rest. You likely won't have all the time you want to make a shot. So you actually have to practice setting up your shooting position on a slope or in a forest or shooting offhand. And all of these things will help you be more confident when it actually comes time to pull the trigger. Now, let's say you go out hunting and you're actually successful. What are you going to do with the meat? I call this a success plan. And this is 100% something that you need to flesh out before you go out on your hunt. So maybe you want to process your animal at home. How are you going to get the animal back to your truck and then back home without the meat spoiling? Part of your success plan may be having some friends you can call to help you pack the animal out. It may be having coolers in the truck that have ice in them so that once you get the animal to the truck, you can put the quarters on ice and it will be stable from there. Maybe it's just you understanding that you only have an hour drive from your hunting area to your house and that you can likely get the animal to your truck in 4 or 5 hours. And if that's the case and the temperatures are cool enough outside, maybe that's your success plan. You're just going to pack it out straight to your car and then immediately drive home, put it in your refrigerator. Whatever it is, you just need to think about it beforehand. Now, maybe you don't want to process the animal yourself. Maybe you're planning to bring it to a processor. Well, you definitely need to know which processors are in the area, what their hours are, and what their requirements are for taking an animal. Some processors will only take whole animals. Other processors want the animals quartered out on ice. So look up the processors in your area, give them a call, write them down in your phone or save them in maps in your phone so that you know exactly what you're going to do with an animal once you kill it. You wouldn't want to be out hunting, say in October, and the temperatures are still warm, and you realize you killed the animal a little bit too far back. You're going to have a hard time getting it back to your truck. So that takes you a long time. And then you get back to your truck and you don't have any coolers or ice, and you have a 2.5 hour drive back to your home or to the processor. All of a sudden, you may be risking meat spoilage, and it's just going to be a stressful, bad day. So think through it before you go hunting. The final thing I would consider when planning a hunt is a fitness plan. Physical adaptations take time. It's commonly quoted that to build muscle, you need something like 8 weeks of training. And for aerobic adaptations, it takes even longer, something like 3 to 4 months. So if you want to get the most out of your hunt, you need to think about how long it's going to take you to train leading up to it. And this could be training, this could be in the gym, and this could include rucking, all of that, or it could just be walking. 4 months of walking is going to make you feel better on your hunt than 4 months of really just being sedentary. And then leading up to the hunt, you do 2 weeks of intensive exercise. Really, it's just the slow, easy adaptations over time that are going to help you. And so just plan ahead and make sure that you have enough time for those things to happen in your body. All right, guys, I hope this has been helpful for you. I know not everybody is going to plan at such a detailed level, but if you do, I think you're likely to have a better hunt. I'll leave you with a final thought. If you're already planning hunts this year, think about how you can bring a new hunter hunting. You probably know someone who's interested in hunting, but who just hasn't gotten around to it or who doesn't know how to start. And now would be a good time to reach out, and it will give them plenty of time to get their hunter safety squared away. Spring turkey season is actually a great time to introduce people to hunting. It's coming up and it's low pressure and a lot of fun. So think about it. You don't have to invite everybody you know. Definitely don't invite people you'd be uncomfortable with around guns. But if you enjoy hunting, chances are other people will too. And we need people to buy in or at least feel favorable towards the lifestyle so that hunting will remain possible in the future. So with that, I will wrap this up. Best of luck on your tag draws, and I will catch you on the next one.